Hello, we may start, I think. Yes. We may start, I think. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar, which is dedicated to the relations between Iran and three South Caucasus countries. I'm very honored to introduce our esteemed speakers. Keynote speaker, Yeghia TASHJIAN, who will be speaking on behalf of Iran. Fuad Chiragov, Center for Studies of the South Caucasus, on behalf of Azerbaijan. Styopa Safaryan, the Armenian Institute of International Security Affairs, founder of this organization on behalf of Armenia, of course. And in the flesh, right next to me, Emil Avdaliani, expert for Geocase. I also welcome our guests, and I'm expecting interesting discussion here, since we're going to devote about half an hour to Q&A session. So our first keynote speaker, Yeghia TASHJIAN, American University of Beirut. The floor is yours. Relations of Iran and between Iran and three South Caucasus states. That's a complex issue, of course, because Iran itself is a pretty, let's say, complex regional power. Now, with ancient history and quite complicated relations with, I would say, all of the three Caucasus republics. So, floor is yours. Please, Yeghia.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you also for the Georgian Strategic Analysis Center for inviting me to speak. So I want to share my PowerPoint. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, great. So basically, I will talk about Iran, but also a bit India, because when it comes to interconnectivity in South Caucasus and Iran's foreign policy, which is like also it has a geoeconomic interest, in addition to geopolitical interest, also linked to India's interest in the region. So within this context, I will talk a bit about the international North-South transport corridor, where it is very important for Russia, Iran, and India when it comes to trade interconnectivity. This initiation or project was initiated in 2000, where the main idea was to build a transport corridor. As seen in the map, also Iran plays a very important transit corridor connecting Russia, South Caucasus to the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. So basically, this project has three routes: the western route, which connects Caucasus to the Persian Gulf; the central route, connecting Caspian Sea to the Persian Gulf via Iran, of course; and finally, the eastern route, which connects Central Asia to the Persian Gulf. When it comes to North-South transport corridor, it is very crucial for Iran and also for Russia, because as seen, compared to the Suez Canal maritime route, it's much closer geographically, and it is less costly and timely. Why it's important also for Russia? When I was in Russia in the conference, Primakov Center, one of the Russian scholars, he argued that the North-South corridor is existential for Russia. It is very important. As we see in the map, there are three corridors here: the Northern Corridor, the Middle Corridor, and this is directly now important for the South Caucasus, and finally the ocean route, which connects also China to Europe. After the invasion, the Russian invasion on Ukraine, the Northern Corridor became sanctioned, so there are two remaining corridors: the Middle Corridor and the Ocean Corridor. As seen in the map, the Ocean Corridor, it takes much longer when it comes to trade. So this is why now the Russians and the Iranians, they are trying to facilitate the North-South corridor, which is much cheaper for them and also much advantageous. From the Russian perspective, of course, they also aim to connect the region together and to stabilize the region, because also they have some interest in the Middle East, as we'll see it here. In the last few years, Iran offered a transport corridor to Azerbaijan, bypassing Armenia. This was signed in March 18, 2022. The main also idea from the Iranian perspective was also to minimize the pressure on Armenia, especially the military and the political pressure coming from Azerbaijan when it comes to the so-called Zangezur corridor, which I will talk about it later in detail. Another interesting thing was that Iraq and Syria, they started discussing the railway project to connect Iraq to Syria, but most importantly, this will also connect Russia and Iran to the Mediterranean. Thus, if the whole north-south corridor in the future will be accomplished, and there is a small link of 164-kilometer railway, which is still being built between Azerbaijan and Iran, for the first time in history, the Russians will have access to the Mediterranean through the railway. So this will facilitate trade. And a few months ago, also, actually a few weeks ago, an agreement was signed between Iraq and Iran to finalize the trade. Why I'm talking about this? Because when it comes to Iran's understanding, Iran's foreign policy towards the South Caucasus, that is toward Georgia, Iran, and Azerbaijan, we also have to understand the interconnectivity between South Caucasus and Middle East, especially in understanding the mind and the mindset of the Russian and the Iranian foreign policy making. Now, why Armenia is important for Iran? Because Armenia has Iran has access to Russia either from Azerbaijan or through Turkey. So from the Iranian perspective, if any political clash may happen between Azerbaijan or with Turkey, then Iran will have an alternative route connecting Armenia, Georgia to Russia. This is very important because Iran would have a third route on access to Black Sea and Eurasia to Armenia. This is why, from the Iranian perspective, they don't want to be at the mercy of Azerbaijan or Turkey. This is why Iran is against the so-called Zangezur corridor, because from the Iranian perspective, any corridor that will try to threaten the strategic Armenian and Iranian border, this is a red line for Iran. And most importantly, also because this has not just geo-economic, but also geopolitical implication. From the Iranian perspective, again, this is based on interviews I have conducted with some Iranian scholars. They believe that if Azerbaijan will try to impose a Zangezur corridor, it means that the status of the corridor, there will be legitimacy question. And maybe in the future, Azerbaijan will be occupying southern Armenia. And also this would instigate secessionist or separatist movements in northern Iran, where, as we know, that around 20 million ethnic Azeris live in northern Iran. So this is from the Iranian perspective. These are the red lines for Iran. That is any establishment of a corridor that would threaten the sovereignty of Armenia and threaten the Armenian-Iranian border. This is a red line. What Iran is doing, actually, Iran is trying its best to adopt some geo-economic policies towards Armenia and Georgia by trying to facilitate the north-south corridor, but at the same time not antagonizing Azerbaijan, because as we realized in the past months, despite for example, the political clash between Azerbaijan and Iran, I don't think that in the future there will be any military clash, because both Iran and Russia, they need Azerbaijan because of its transit role when it comes to the north-south corridor. This is why there are some red lines. On the other hand, in order to try to contain the Azerbaijani expansionist, let's say, policies towards Armenia, the Iranian side, for example, has opened the consulate in Gaban, in Sunik, and at the same time now the Iranians are heavily investing in Sunik, that is the southern Armenia, connecting Armenia to Iran. So thus Iran is trying to play the stick and carrot policy, at the same time trying to engage in military exercises, trying to engage diplomatically with Russia, also with Azerbaijan, and also with Armenia, because any war or any military clash, it is not in the interest of Iran, not just for geopolitical consideration that I have talked, but also for geoeconomic consideration, especially in the case of North-South corridor, because as I said, it is the only corridor that now connects Russia to Iran. From the Iranian perspective, again, this is not my personal analysis. A survey was made and was published in the Tehran International Studies and Research Institute, where according to the survey, these are the following. So in response of the post-2020 war, military escalation in South Caucasus, we can realize that 52% of the Iranian scholars and the policymakers, they argued that there are regional actors behind the escalation between Armenia and Azerbaijan. When they have identified, usually they have identified either Turkey, Israel, and US. Interestingly, none has identified Russia in this case. Regarding who is more influential when it comes to decision-making, most of them, they argued either Turkey or Israel, because both of them, actually, they have strategic relations with Baku. 43% of the respondents also, they said that Iran should adopt a passive neutrality, that it should not engage in any military clash. Whereas 31%, they said that Iran should take measures in terms of multilateral diplomacy. And finally, 43% of the respondents arguing whether Iran should take a preventative measure to defend its security interest. This is also shows that at least, even less than the 50% of the scholars, they argue that Iran should take some preventive measures when it comes to security and military. What we can understand from is that there is a dissatisfaction from the expert circle in Iran, and somehow a difference of opinions when it comes to foreign policy of Iran, which always tries to take a balanced approach, but when it comes to the academic circles and the scholars, they have reservations on the foreign policy of their country towards South Caucasus. Also, we can highlight that there are constraints and limitations on Iran's foreign policy, and this is why we have to interconnect what is happening in the Middle East to South Caucasus. Iran's effort to reconcile with Saudi Arabia is to some extent also related to the developments in its northern border, especially between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And finally, that we can realize that the Iranian scholars are trying to provide some recommendations to Iran's foreign policy, the decision makers in Iran's foreign policy, in order to shift their foreign policy in South Caucasus from passive diplomacy to become more proactive diplomacy. And finally, when it comes to India, I have added also the Indian topic, even though it's not related, but I think that it is indirectly and maybe directly also related to the North-South corridor and also of Iran's foreign policy aspirations in the region. Because any war, an coming war or a clash in the region, here I'm talking about South Caucasus, of course, it is not also in the geoeconomic interest of India. India is trying its best, actually, to try to balance in the region, to invest both in Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now India is the only partner of Armenia, providing weapons and arming to Armenian army to create a certain military balance in the region. According to, from the Indian perspective, that such a balance would actually try to minimize the future escalation in the region. The Indians also, they have their reservations. After the war of Nagorno-Karabakh, we have seen, for example, that some Azerbaijanis, especially in the social media, they have argued that after Nagorno-Karabakh, the next target will be Kashmir. And we also realized that the president of Turkey, Erdogan, many times in the UN and also regional conferences, he argued about the issue of the Kashmir. And the Indians were very concerned when they have also realized the deployment of the Syrian mercenaries in the Nagorno-Karabakh. They are afraid that in the future, maybe there will be a repetition of such a scenario in Kashmir. So from the Indian perspective, also balancing between Armenia and Azerbaijan is important, as long as this would bring peace and not a new war in the region. That is why, finally, we believe that there is somehow an interconnectivity. And from the Iranian and also the Indian perspective, the argument is that the more there is interconnectivity of trade, that is the opening of trade routes between Armenia and Azerbaijan is important for them. And this is why they believe that the North-South corridor, both Armenia and Azerbaijan can participate, despite the fact that Azerbaijan's infrastructure is much developed compared to Armenia. That is, the Azerbaijanis, for example, they have a railway connection, unlike Armenia. They believe that at the same time, Armenia, by building the strategic north-south highway that is connecting Georgia to Iran, will play important role. It will bring investment in the region, and maybe also by opening the trade route between both countries, it will also minimize the potential or the possibility of any new war in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I give floor to Fuad Chiragov, I would like to draw a few conclusions from your presentation. A few key conclusions, let's say. Number one is that you mentioned, of course, a huge ethnic Azerbaijani minority living in northern Iran, which no doubt complicates relations between those two countries. You also mentioned possible conflict of Iran with Azerbaijan-Turkish alliance, so to say, and in this case, Georgia and Armenia serving as some kind of, route to reach the outside world. It's no secret that Iran has suffered from the isolation since 80s. That's something that Iran and Armenia, I would say, have in common, and that everyone in the region would benefit very, very much if they ended with this conflict and opened up new trade routes. And that's you have two sides of the story: one pessimistic possible conflict, and the other optimistic. Thank you so much. Now the floor is yours, Fuad.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for this opportunity. I was thinking to build my speech on a different way, but I will go on deep details. So thank you for Yeghia bringing very important issues, but I need to make some clarifications. For this, I need just to put on the screen one map, if it's possible. I don't know how to do it in order to explain it. So how could I can do it?
You can share a screen it.
Where is that? Oh, that's just screen.
Please instruct him.
Moment.
There is a share screen button on your screen. You have to see it. It's green.
On the bottom.
On the bottom, this is
Share screen. Yes, green one.
okay. Well, I will go in detail. So basically, you get touched important issues about the north-south transit route. Yes, it's very important, and actually, the Azerbaijan, Iran, and Russia were discussing it prior to that. And a couple of years ago, actually, Azerbaijan offered around 300 million US dollar in order to build railroad from Astara to Rasht in order to complete. On the Azerbaijani territory, it's from the north to the south, it's everything is ready. And on the Russian territory is also it's ready. For me, the place of Armenia in the north-south route is a little bit, how to say it, irrelevant, because there is no railroad from the north to the south of Armenia. In Zengezur, the territory between Nakhchivan and Azerbaijan, this territory is very mountainous. And according for some calculations, at least a couple of billions of US dollars are needed to construct bridges, tunnels through this territory. Nobody is going to invest on this territory, but in the Soviet times, there was a railroad connecting Armenia to Iran. It passed through the Nakhchivan, Julfa railroad. So only automobile roads can be relevant in this term, connecting from the south to north of Armenia. Another issue is about the claims of the Iranian side, as if that Azerbaijan wants to take over the southern part of Armenia, and it will disconnect Armenia from Iran. So the couple of issues here should be mentioned. If we talk about the Zengezur corridor, about the railroad, that railroad actually passes through the Armenian territory 2 times. It crosses the mainland of Azerbaijan to Zengezur or Sunyi and goes to Nakhchivan along the Araks River. And again, in order to reach Kars, that railroad passes through the territory of Armenia. Again, there is no railroad between Turkey in that part, between Turkey and Nakhchivan. So how can this Zengezur corridor cut? Again, we have to pass through the territory of Armenia. Another second issue is that according to trilateral declaration in 2020, that road should be under operational control of the Russian troops. If there is any, I mean, we call it Zengezur corridor, the Armenians deny this term. They say that there is no mention of about the Zengezur corridor. Okay, let's take that there is a point unimpeded or unhindered connection between mainland Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan. That route must be and should be under Russian Russian military's operational control. And if there is any claim, if there is any argument from the Iranian side that this road somehow will cut Armenia from Iran, that should be addressed to Russia. So another, I think that the recent tension actually between Azerbaijan and Iran is actually goes very deep. And what we see currently that the region that Iran is playing very disruptive role in the region actually, and in a very fragile, and this everything is very fragile right now. Iran recently appointed a new ambassador to Armenia. That person was an ambassador of Iran in Syria. He is not an ordinary diplomat. And he was a military guy who was coordinating all military and logistic affairs of Iran in Syria. And then he will bring this his previous experience to the region, unfortunately. And the main target actually of the Iranian foreign policy in the South Caucasus, I think, is Azerbaijan. Relations of Iran with Armenia and Georgia, I'm sorry if I offend somehow, are subordinate to the relations with Azerbaijan and evaluated through prism of the relations with Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijani relations are historically unique, multilayered, and complicated. And since the first day of independence, the tensions of different magnitude and mutual distaste were the nature of our relations. And it was normal. And abnormal was actually the Rouhani period. During the Rouhani period, the negative trends were surpassed by positive cooperative agenda. And we could, during the Rouhani period, move forward through the North-South transit road and other cooperation agenda. And actually, as I already mentioned it once, after 2020, in the region, I think the 2 layers of the Pandora box was opened. It was for Iran. it was the results of the 2020 war. It caught the Iranian side surprise because they thought that Azerbaijan would never be able to liberate its territories. And even if the war starts, Azerbaijan will not be able to go that far. So therefore, prior 2020, Iran kept low profile in the South Caucasus, especially in the relations regarding Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict. Iran limited itself with covert operations, hybrid warfare, religious propaganda, influence, and infiltration operations. And the second layer of the Pandora, I believe, was opened after the war in Ukraine. They suddenly found out that Turkey came to the region. It was the first time when Russia shared its sphere of influence in the region, and it irritated Iran. If you go back even the Rouhani period, the last months, the poetry that cited by Erdogan in Baku flared tensions between Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Iran. And you know, the last point, why I think that these relations between Azerbaijan and Iran are very complicated and very deep, because these relations are somehow similar with the relations of the Russia and Ukraine. Russian elite does not want to consider Ukraine as a state or a nation, and the same is the view of the Azerbaijan on the part of Iran. For them, there are the Azerbaijan, all South Caucasus, is a historical part of Iran. At the same time, if we go, we will see that as Ukrainians have been important part of the Russian elites throughout the history, the same for Iran. The dominant role of Azerbaijanis in the history of Iran is well known, at least from the period of the Seljuks until 1925. Ruling dynasties always in Iran were Turkic or Azerbaijani, and military political leadership were mainly Azerbaijanis. Still, some people claim that religious leader of the Iran, Khamenei, is Azerbaijani heritage. So we have common heritage, and this common heritage does not unite us. It actually divides us. So the claims of Iran about the Zengezur, that Azerbaijan wants to cut Iran from Armenia, for us it's like a pretext. They just want to find some justification of their irritation and their policies. Iran, on March 21st this year, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran, Khani, on his tweet in English wrote that they are declaring South Caucasus as the prioritizing South Caucasus, and they are concentrating all diplomatic resources in this direction. This is a very unique and very important declaration, I believe, in more than 200 years. and it make me not only me but all experts in Azerbaijan nervous. What does it mean, and how Iran's further relations will be? But because so far what we see is that Iran chose destructive and spiral in this relation. They are raising the tensions. Yesterday, the president of Azerbaijan congratulated the Iranian president on Ramadan holiday. There are some few on recent days signs that relations or tensions might decrease, but the issue is that there are some confusing signals are coming from Iran. In the last, before the terrorist attack to the Azerbaijan embassy in Tehran, 2 days before that event, the Iranian ambassador met with the assistant of president, and he put the photo and wrote that diplomacy works. And after 2 days, that terrorist attack happened. So only two explanations, we can give only two explanations to it. One is that there are different groups inside Iran. They are competing about the future policies in our direction, or it's Iran just wants to confuse Azerbaijan and its decision makers. So we will see in the coming days, in coming months, in what direction we will go.
Thank you, Fuad. You spoke mainly about pessimistic scenarios, and you spoke about, well, complicated relations once again between Azerbaijan and Iran, which could be easily explained. You also mentioned very interesting thing that Iran views the whole South Caucasus just like Russia has viewed Ukraine, some kind of a vital, indivisible part of its territory. Thank you. Now, Stepan, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, all of you, and thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity and this wonderful format you invited us as speakers. I also appreciate Mr. TASHJIAN's panoramic and key speech for bringing this wider region for the discussion. I will start from, in general, I share this analysis what Mr. TASHJIAN said or presented to us, but I will go into details on the ground, especially in the Caucasus, because, well, all these processes are really interconnected with this transport communications, south-north, east-west, how we call it, middle corridor or something else. But I think we have to start from the Russian plans in the region, because this is very serious and we can't ignore what Russia is doing here and what are the strategic goals of that game. This plan dates back to 2008, just immediately after Russian-Georgian War, when Russia drew some lessons from that war of aggression against Georgia and believed that, in fact, it was not a complete solution because it has never solved the problem of Georgia, bringing Georgia to Russian orbit. And if you read Kremlin analysts from since that date, you can see what lessons they learned. First, conflicts may not be solved, but status quo should be transformed into a new one, which envisages Russian military presence in the region. And this is what we have, thanks to Azerbaijan's aggression in 2020, bringing the second military base to the region. Second, if you look at the so-called Lavrov's plan and its philosophy, it was called as territories for, as a deal, territories for deblocking of the region. This is what Armenian officials were told in 2015, 2016. And as it was not envisaging or providing any status, even interim status for Nagorno-Karabakh, that is why Armenian side was resisting to those plans. And that is why we have 4-day April war in 2016, and we have 44-day war in 2020. This plan was, as it is stipulated in the statement, trilateral statement of 9th of November, and in following documents like the trilateral statement on deblocking the region, or demarcation or delimitation, or Sochi declaration signed last year on mediating, shows that Fuad said that in fact it's first time that Russia shares some zone of influence or power in the region. But this is what Russian plan is about. It's about pulling the West from the region, and it's about regionalizing the conflicts where international actors has no role to play. And this is controlling the communication from east to west and from north to south. And that is what we read in the statement of 9th of November, when it comes to the connection, which Azerbaijan calls as a corridor, which is not in terms of a latching corridor stipulated by that statement. However, this statement says that yes, Russia will effectively control the communication, provide the security of cargoes and movement between mainland of Azerbaijan, West Azerbaijan and Nakhichevan. So I wouldn't agree with Fuad in a term that Iran plays in a destabilizing role in the region. Fuad made me a lawyer or an advocate of Iran, which I don't want to be. However, Iran is in this wider great game. Iran is still a power in the region, or next to the region, which is interested in sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. I absolutely understand Azerbaijani interpretation of Iran's perspective on Nagorno-Karabakh issue, etc., but believe me, in our conversation that took place many times before, they never said that they are interested in this situation at all. They were afraid of changes of territorial integrities. They expressed that fear to us, and what Armenian side was explaining to Iran was that we are trying to comprehensively settle this conflict in a full package, when these international guarantees and international status for Nagorno-Karabakh is provided. And Armenia, since 1991, has always been interested in territorial integrities of of the countries of the region. Nagorno-Karabakh, I know your counter argument, but again, coming to Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, you know the package that it included 6 elements: return of territories, return of refugees, providing the comprehensive status for Nagorno-Karabakh, etc., etc. So if we are trying to analyze Iran's interest in that region, it was not about changing the borders, something which is currently pursued by Azerbaijan right now regarding to Armenia, regarding to Iran, openly claiming territories, openly speaking about some Western Azerbaijan, Northern Azerbaijan, etc., on the official level, by the way, or even people who represent Aliyev's administration. Coming to these issues, if we analyze the situation on the ground, all what we have after the 2020 war is closely related to these communication games and these communication routes. Remember that when following up to the trilateral statement of 11 January, when Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia were discussing opening of the railway connection, and perhaps Mr. Chiragov will confirm that the more optional route, railway connection that could deblock the region was connecting Azerbaijan, Georgia, Armenia, and Nakhichevan, and Iran. And after these talks, we had an escalation right next to Nakhichevan in Yeghia's region, because Azerbaijan was insisting another route, while Armenia was ready to provide full access and communication and use of this railway, which is more effective, more operational, and which really brings all 3 countries in the South Caucasus together. After this, we haven't this deblocking process, and no one knows what is going on within that committee, which convenes regular meetings on the ministerial levels, etc., etc. And we have 4 pillars of Russian architecture in the region. First is peacekeeping operation in Nagorno-Karabakh. Second is the blocking and delimitation, the blocking of communications. Third is delimitation and demarcation of borders. And fourth is, as I told, is the negotiation or normalization of Armenian-Azerbaijani relations in accordance to Sochi Declaration. And all these 4 pillars shows that Russia is everywhere, not to allow to solve these conflicts, not to allow to stabilize the situation, because there are other beneficiaries in the region, and Iran is one of them, which is the closest neighbor of the region, which is interested in connection of the Black Sea and Persian Gulf and even Indian Ocean, as TASHJIAN greatly presented. And that is why all these troubles, all this destabilization are against engagement of other actors, be it the West in the form of the of their role as a mediator, as a peace broker, or Iran as a country who is the first beneficiary from that communication. And finally, I don't think that, although Fuad said that for Iran, this rhetoric, these statements of cutting Iran from Armenia are just a pretext. However, the danger is really the threat is really very serious, and we see from every aggression by Azerbaijan, be it in 21st May 12 or 13 September of last year, and all these attempts had a far-reaching goal to cut the south of Armenia, and this is what Iran is resisting to. And this is what Iran is afraid of, believing that as a result of these war scenarios, well, in fact, we will have, as you rightly said, a very strange security environment or unsecure environment, where the engagement of third players, especially from the Western one, is allowed by Russia, because in Sunnik, in the south of Armenia, just the country, the power who controls these roads, they control Europe, Asia, Europe, Middle East communication, and this is why South Caucasus and Armenia South is of strategic importance for all. And this is why Iran's resistance is kind of leverage, deterrence of Azerbaijani intention. If not this, of course, if Baku is really interested in connecting all three countries, if Baku is really interested in the blocking of the region, if Baku is interested in connecting the Europe and the Central Asia, the Middle East, and the Far East, then of course there are very, very clear options, very clear demarcation of very, very quick demarcation of Armenia-Azerbaijani border without linking it to any other issue, because believe me, having a gray zone next to Armenia-Azerbaijani border is not in the interest of Azerbaijan even. And just making that zone a gray zone, a zone of security vacuum, will work against Azerbaijani interest in long term. And that is why I believe that we have very clear messages from the Europe on their interest to have a stability in the region. We have very clear message from Iran, from Tehran, not to change territorial or international recognized borders here in the region, and from the United States. And this is, I think, at least the most optimistic picture which you would like to hear, that we can develop and we can just create this step-by-step atmosphere of confidence and solve the problems. Because, as I told, in 4 pillars of the current security infrastructures, Russia is present. And Russia's far-reaching goals never envisages the solution of those problems. And unfortunately, what we see in last 3 years is that Azerbaijan is mostly playing in that field rather than building or opening the region for other players. Because my last conclusion is that unfortunately, this fear of Azerbaijan from the internationalization of the Karabakh conflict, which is obvious fact since 1992, brings Azerbaijan more closer to Russia, because neither Russia nor Azerbaijan are interested in the internationalization of the conflict. And that is why we have a deal here, which is a source of instability in the region, plus other maybe commitment of Azerbaijan before Israel and Turkey for their support in 2020 war. And that is why we have very dangerous tension between Azerbaijan and Iran, which is, I think Azerbaijan, not only Azerbaijan, but all countries should understand that looking at the Ukrainian tragedy, Ukrainian drama, in case of large-scale war, in case of wider escalation, none of us will benefit from this war. Beneficiaries are always outside of the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Styopa. You actually brought up, you mentioned elephant in the room, Russia, which, as we all know, we have to admit, still remain forced to reckon with in the region, so to say. I had an urge to make a few remarks regarding Georgia's relations with Iran. This topic was brought up, but I restrained myself because here we have Emil, who is going to speak on this issue. Please.
Thank you for organizers for this event, and special thanks to my colleagues from Azerbaijan and Armenia. Well, my comments essentially and major points which I will be bringing up will somehow surely echo what previous speakers said. But I would like to point a major so to say trend in Georgia-Iran relations. Surely Georgia is of less importance for Iran than it is the case with Armenia and Azerbaijan, and that's mainly for geographic reasons. But we know, from what Iranian analysts and politicians think, that the role of Georgia for Iran is primarily because of its presence, because of its border on the Black Sea region, and Iranians in very many cases see Georgia as an endpoint in almost all of the connectivity projects which they envisage for the South Caucasus. Very many in Iran also even think that the north-south corridor, even if it goes through Azerbaijan, Caspian Sea, and Central Asia, it still could be connected to Georgia via Azerbaijan. Or, as my colleagues from Armenia said, if it goes through Armenia, that surely too will bring Georgia in. So in almost every essentially regional infrastructure project, Georgia figures as a place with its ports on the Black Sea region as a necessary, as an important point in Iran's vision of the region. It also brings in the role of Georgia for Iran in a much wider perspective, I think, that surely the South Caucasus has regained its importance in Iran's foreign policy. We all know that for Iran, Syria, Lebanon, or Gulf region, those are the areas which are of far bigger importance, or have been far bigger importance for the Islamic Republic than it was with the South Caucasus. But I think with the war of 2020 and the ensuing difficulties and tensions between Azerbaijan and Iran, intensive cooperation between Armenia and Iran, the role of the region for Iran has increased substantially. And I think this is a longer term perspective, a major shift in the thinking of the Iranian leadership when it comes to the South Caucasus. It also brings in the issue how Iran sees essentially the the role of outside powers. This is a very important question because Iran applies the concept, the idea of regionalism to when it comes to its policy in the South Caucasus. It really does not want to see non-regional presence in here, and that primarily involves how Iran sees its relations with Georgia, because Georgia is a openly pro-Western country with the potential of deepening its ties with EU or even with NATO or the US. This actually is very problematic for Iran because they do not really want to see any outside power in the region. And that's how we see those various regional formats supported or presented by Iran, such as 3+3 or other ideas from the early 90s. So for Iran, cooperating with other regional powers such as Turkey and Russia is far more comfortable than seeing non-regional presence in here. Surely they do not really like Russia in every aspect, nor Turkey, but I think it's, again, it's they feel more comfortable still working with them as fellow regional actors than seeing EU and others in here. But Iran can be also very, very, very elastic in its foreign policy in that regard too. Even when Armenia agreed to the EU mission to its border with Azerbaijan, Iran actually did not really say no to that. So Iran can be opportunistic, which again shows that when it comes to foreign policy in the South Caucasus, Iran is not very religious in its, I would say, fanatic, religious, radical in its approach. Iran is, I would say, conducting a very clever foreign policy in the South Caucasus. And you might disagree with that, and I will be happy to hear your counter arguments on that too. So I think we need to see the role of the South Caucasus for the Islamic Republic within the broader context of how Iran sees the present world order and how it wants to change the present world order and build a new one. And I think we often, and my colleagues, it's hard to disagree with them on how relations between Russia and Iran have progressed over the past year or so since the invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces. But I would sort of twist a bit this argument and say that Iran actually sees an opportunity to expand its influence in the South Caucasus exactly because of the Russian weaknesses following the war in Ukraine. So Iran feels that it can now a bit push for having bigger influence in the region, thinking that Russia might not be able, or actually will be simply unwilling or hesitant to go against the Islamic Republic as it has been doing for decades since the end of the Soviet Union. So Iran here too, again, is very opportunistic. The country now entered a sort of a great power competition, even though it sort of overlaps in its major concepts on foreign policy with Russia. So it nevertheless competes with Russia, and it does so also with Turkey too. So I think that's the big question or big trend, I would say, which we have in Iran's perspective on the region. And how Georgia, with its openly pro-Western foreign policy and potential to have closer military ties with the West, has featured in various ideas of the Islamic Republic. And here I think we also need to pay attention to another big trend which we have, and I'm very curious to hear Fuad's and other colleagues' feedback on that. But I think that even though Azerbaijan and Iran will remain pragmatic, will try to remain pragmatic, I think the longer term perspective is that tensions are bound to repeat, to continue between the two countries, to persist between the two countries. And this is a big change for Azerbaijan too, and for Iran. And I think we sort of enter a period when, if before 2020, for example, it was still Armenia which represented a threat for Azerbaijan from Baku's perspective, now for Baku, it's not so much Armenia, but the Islamic Republic. And so this shift is of very significant importance, I think, for the entire region. It also shows that, in a way, Iran sort of tries to increase its influence, and it also shows, and I think it echoes with Mr. Safaryan's idea that we gonna see not only Russia as a single power essentially, but a number of them. That's Turkey, that's Iran, that's surely Russia. So we are sort of entering a, how to say, I might be over creative here, but sort of a multipolar vision for the South Caucasus. No power will be able to control the region exclusively, I think. Surely Russia has its military bases and its influence, but I think it also betrays weaknesses in Russia's foreign policy that to control the region, it has to have 4 military bases in the South Caucasus. And in 4 military bases, I mean 2 ones on Georgian soil and 1 in Armenia, and then another sort of a peacekeeping military base in Azerbaijan. So I think the idea here is that with the war in Ukraine, with the results of the Nagorno-Karabakh war of 2020, we sort of entering in the region. We are entering the period of much multi-layered foreign policy than we have been used to in the past. So it's no longer about West and Russia competition in the region. It's about West and Russia, but also Turkey, Iran, Russia, Turkey, Russia, and so we are sort of in multiplication, a much congested foreign geopolitical space than it has been before. So I think I sort of pinpointed major sort of trends for you, concluding with the remark that Georgia features much less in Iran's foreign policy. And again, I think the geography now, geography matters a lot in here. Its focus is mainly on Armenia and Azerbaijan. Many thanks.
Emil, thank you. And now we are opening our Q&A session, which I guess is going to be pretty animated. As I know, our good.
Start from them. Maybe they have got. Maybe they have got comments or something.
Unless, of course, unless any of you want to comment, has something to say in response to presentations made his colleague.
So we will touch upon them during the Q&A session.
Unless you have any comment regarding your presentation of your colleagues, so we're gonna start our Q&A session, and our good friend Andrzej Glimchuk, with whom I guess you are well acquainted, has a question here. Of course, Andrzej, any of our guests don't know Andrzej, he's actually heart and soul of this our event. So please,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this very interesting and comprehensive speeches. On behalf of organizers, I would like to thank you very much for taking part in this event. And I have some questions. Yeghia, you mentioned that the possibility of escalation between Iran and Azerbaijan is unlikely. That means very few. But from other sources, we see that the escalation is rising. I understand that yesterday was greetings between leaders of Armenia, Azerbaijan and Iran, but it's only gesta. That first. Second, Mr. Safaryan, if I may, you mentioned, about the cooperation, and I'm asking about the possible military cooperation between your country and Iran, because you need some new weapons, especially after 2022 war. And Fuad, if I may, because there is, as somebody said, there is an elephant in the room, but nobody mentioned about Israel. Could you tell us, because the cooperation or now ties between your country and Israel seems very influential on the region and on the policy your country towards Iran. Could you elaborate more about this? Thank you very much.
Who should start?
Thank you. Sorry, Fuad. If any of our guests have questions, they can either type in the chat box or just raise hand and we give the floor. And I also have a question for Yeghia, actually. None of you actually mentioned 3+3 format. Something.
Said something about 3+3, but didn't mention that Georgia would.
Yes, yes, that's right. That's right. Yes, and my question would be that once again, of course, Iran is interested, as Emil mentioned here, in regionalization, so to say, so to exclude any outside player, outside power from the region. So Iran is strongly interested in this 3+3 format. And how do they view Georgia's position regarding 3+3? Thank you. Okay. Now, please, there is another question. Let's collect 3 questions. One mine, one Ange's, and the other, and Marko Solic. And please, and after that, we return to our speakers. They answer to this question, and they will go around and collect next questions. Okay, one more question, then the answers, and then we go for questions again. Okay, please.
Sorry, can I ask my question or should I wait? I didn't.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Marko Solic. I'm with the Norwegian Embassy in Tbilisi, covering both Georgia and Armenia. I would like to say a big thanks to all of you, to the organizers, and to the speakers. I feel privileged to be able to be here and listen to you and ask questions. It's very interesting. I think my first question would be, it's already been touched upon, especially by Mr. Safaryan and Mr. Avdaliani, but maybe the other speakers and possibly those who already touched upon it could elaborate a bit more. So it was mentioned as the elephant in the room, Russia's role. And I think what is clear from what you are saying, coordination, cooperation, and tension between Iran and Russia has a lot of consequences for the South Caucasus. What are, some were already mentioned, but do you have other points of overlapping interests and, on the contrary, pressure or tension points between Russia and Iran that will likely surface in the near future? That was my first question. The second one, from more as a foreign policy practitioner perspective, I'm always interested to hear about where foreign policy is formulated inside the Armenian political establishment. Who is calling the shots? How do they formulate their policy on the South Caucasus? If any one of you would have any knowledge about this, it would be very interesting to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we go to our speakers, and then we collect another set of questions. Yeghia first. Let's go in the same order. Same order. First Yeghia, then Fuad, Styopa, and then Emil. Please.
Thank you so much for the question. Regarding the possible escalation between Azerbaijan and Iran, why it is not in the interest of Iran? Because Iran is very concerned that if any war or something like a clash would happen, then directly this would invite Israeli military presence in the region, something that the Iranians would not like. And this is why the reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Iran should be viewed from this perspective, because Iran wants to secure its southern and at the same time southwestern border in the Middle East, that if any possible escalation would happen in the north, it would not remain isolated in the region. That is why maybe Iran is trying to engage in strategic missions with Azerbaijan and engage in regional trade interconnectivity to avoid any war in the future. Regarding the 3+3 format, of course, this is in the interest of Iran because it is also isolating the US and EU from any regional cooperation in the region. At the same time, as I think Emil said, that when we look to the region from the Iranian perspective, regionalism is very, very something important. Regarding, I think Mr. Marco, he said about Iran and Russia foreign policy engagement. When I was in Tbilisi a few weeks ago, I talked about that why Syria is very, very important. And I came with the term co-opetition between Turkey and Russia and also between Russia and Iran. That is, it's neither cooperation nor competition. The Syrian example, analyzing the Syrian example is very, very similar to what is happening in South Caucasus. We have the same three influential actors, Iran, Turkey, and Russia. They are cooperating, but at the same time competing in Syria. And this is the same in South Caucasus, and it will remain. Now, whether this co-opetition or arrangement will sustain, we are not sure. It is also very much dependent on the outcome of the elections in Turkey. May 14 is a very important date in the region. If any change will happen, definitely it will have an impact on the region. So I cannot answer now. Maybe I can answer after May 14. Thank you.
Okay, Fuad.
Okay, thank you for the question. I will start from the Israel issue. So the unofficial Iranian rhetoric, it's always the pretext and main argument against Azerbaijan. But this cooperation is not something new. It started many years ago. But at the same time, the officials of Azerbaijan always declared that these relations are not against the third party. One of the main principles of Azerbaijan foreign policy is that the bilateral relations with any country cannot be against a third party. So one example. Recently, as you know, Azerbaijan opened an embassy and appointed ambassador to Israel. If you go analyze the speech of our newly appointed ambassador, he openly said that our relations are is not against the third party. Then you can ask that why Israel is helping Azerbaijan if it's not against if not it's against Iran. The answer is very actually simple. It's because first of all it's very useful. Azerbaijan has money, billions of dollars. Israel buys our energy resources, and it plays a significant role in the basket of the Israeli energy consumption. But at the same time, least but not last, it's because Israel just wants the successful Azerbaijan, winner Azerbaijan, developing Azerbaijan. It can sound very naive, but it's the pragmatic approach. First, they want to show that they have a can have a good relations with some Muslim countries, with Shia majority country. At the same time, they do understand that inevitably successful Azerbaijan, winner Azerbaijan, will inspire Azerbaijanis inside Iran, will demonstrate that Azerbaijanis can build an independent country. They can govern themselves. They can be strong. They can be, a modern state. And it's even we do not interfere to domestic affairs of Iran. Even we do not support any separatist movement of Azerbaijanis in Iran. Even existence of Azerbaijani was strong and successful Azerbaijan will inspire Azerbaijanis in Iran. So here we come to the issue. Azerbaijani have many, Russia poses a threat to Azerbaijan, but it's not existential threat. We were part of the Russian Empire, communist Soviet Union, but we could preserve our national identity and national, consciousness, and our culture, and etc. Armenia poses to us a threat as well. We fought, lost the territories, liberated them back, but Armenia do not pose an existential threat to Azerbaijan. Iran is an existential threat for us. We are for Iran as well as an existential threat. As I said that that common historical heritage do not unite us. It divides us. If you go to, for example, one example about the well-known poet Nizami and about a struggle around him, what our president recently said, what the foreign minister of Iran said, what the deputy foreign minister said around it. We do not agree on many cultural issues and identity issues. So Azerbaijan presents as a threat which can deconstruct Iranian construction. So therefore, for them, as a successful Azerbaijan, winner Azerbaijan is a nightmare. About the 3+3, it was proposed actually by Turkey and Azerbaijan right after the war. We did understand that there are competition in the region, there are historical rival in the region, and this historical rival embody post-imperialistic trauma about the region. These regional powers have the South Caucasus has a part in the post-imperial traumas in glorious past. So we try to bring this competition to the constructive route. So that's why right after the war, Azerbaijan and Turkey invited to these countries to 3+3. I'm not agree with Yeghia that Iran is interested in this format, actually, because simply Iran does not have any capacity, any soft power tools or economic potential. They do not have any resources to compete in the region. They do not. So if you look at the Turkish economy, they are diversified in relation with Iran or Russia, have potential to produce more goods to sell in the region and buy the energy resources or the resources from the region. But Iran has not that potential. That's why they choose, they can only compete in a constructive, disruptive ways. They have experience in organizing terrorist organization and Hezbollah style. In our case, they created a Husseinian organization. And one issue about the possibility of the direct military.
One more minute.
Okay, the direct military clash between Azerbaijan and Iran. Yes, it seems very unlikely, but we have a tension right here. Let's put it at one, and there is two direct military clash. What we see is that Iran is gradually increasing that tension up to close to the direct close military clash, attacks on the embassy of Azerbaijan, Iran, attack to member of parliament in Azerbaijan, and other subversion operations inside Azerbaijan, and etc. and etc. We don't know how far, what all the tools Iran will use against Azerbaijan until to the direct military clash. If they will see that all these tools did not work or will not work, I'm sure that they will use also the direct military clash.
Okay, please, Stepan.
Oh, thank you very much. I will start from your question, Mr. Tornike, because when I was speaking about regionalization as Russia's most preferred concept for this region was about this 3+3. To some extent, Mr. Chiragov is right that it's a Turkish proposal. It's not Azerbaijani proposal. It's not a new proposal. And in fact, it's a kind of continuation of the Caucasus Pact of Stability. If you remember when Turkish leadership put forward after Georgian and Russian war, it was an open offer or proposal to share the interest zones in the Caucasus. So I think for Turkey, for Azerbaijan, and Emil Avdaliani is absolutely right, for Iran is a kind of frame not allowing so-called extraterritorial actors to be engaged in the region, be it the EU or the USA. Of course, currently, especially after Ukraine's war, Russia's main concern is mostly United States return or engagement in the South Caucasus and its intensification of its engagement. So that is why I don't think that Armenia and Georgia are happy with this. At least just these two countries who adopted the democratic form of governance cannot be happy, despite of the shortcomings of democratization or in democratic progressing, etc., etc. However, we as a small sized state, we cannot happy being encircled with big powers who has imperial heritage and who are renovating their imperial ambitions in kind of neo-colonialism. For Turkey, it is a neo-Ottomanism. For Russia, it's Russian neo-colonialism. I don't exclude that in Iran there are some sort of ambitions as well. Although
they openly say about it, they openly say that the South Caucasus is historical Iran. Don't advocate for Iran, please.
This is rhetoric, and thank you very much for your intervention. However, your statements that Iran is an existential threat to Azerbaijan, which I heard from many Azerbaijanis, but on the other hand, I never heard from Iranian colleagues that Azerbaijan is an existential threat to Iran. This shows the asymmetry of this perception. And here I would take the part of Yeghia TASHJIAN's analysis that in fact, because of this asymmetric approaches or perceptions, Iran is not interested in any major escalation or tension between Tehran and Azerbaijan. But the same we can't tell for Azerbaijan, and the danger of asymmetric conflicts when we have asymmetric attentions and asymmetric perceptions of the interest of each other. We have very non-linear risks for escalation, to be frank. I wouldn't ignore that risk, because asymmetric conflict may arise very suddenly, unexpectedly, because we have asymmetric understanding and perception of two capitals. For Iran, if Azerbaijani territorial integrity was not that much important to Iran, they wouldn't congratulate you on the restoration of the territorial integrity 3 or 4 times. And it was not a diplomatic gesture at all. This is what I said in my presentation. But here, I don't share the part of your analysis on Israel. I think Israel's and Turkey's engagement and support to Azerbaijan in 44 days was too obvious, and it cannot be because of monies of Baku and all Israeli colleagues and communities, different communities, expert communities. They were they are paying so much attention to Azerbaijan because of Iran. And to be frank, for the world, for the US, for the EU, Armenia of strategic importance because it is a neighboring country to Iran. Believe me, this is a strategic asset for Armenia. And finally, what Mr. Marko Soldic asked about tension between Russia and Iran. Emil Avdaliani again brilliantly formulated this multi-layer and multifaceted game in the Caucasus. They are competing. Don't look at their tactical interplay. Strategically, they are rivalry as Turkey and Russia are. But in this period, when they have a lot of common interest, some power sharing in the region and pulling extraterritorial actors out, made all of them as strategic as tactical partners, but strategic rivalry. And again, I will tell you very interesting information, which is well-known fact now in Armenia, and it was an off-the-record information, to be frank. But in last year, in July, Armenian government received a letter from Russian counterparts from Federal Service on fencing, on Armenia's assistance to fence the river Arax, which is the border with Iran. And Russia was refused. And that is why Armenia was punished last year in September, in August, when Azerbaijan unilaterally changed the route of Lachin corridor without the agreement of Armenia, as the trilateral statement required, and without even before the deadline of this 3-year time period for the agreement of that route, and then followed by Azerbaijani provocation and aggression in the south of Armenia. And believe me, if Russia was not worried at all of that, because in fact here, even in this small detail, we see how Russia is not happy that Iran can be the major beneficiary of these communications. And that is why what Azerbaijan is doing and what Azerbaijan did was in deep interest of Russia. And it shows that here we have some tension in Iran-Russian relations. And it's not accidental that last year in summer, during that 3+3 format summit in Tehran, Iranian supreme leader was alarming before Putin, before Erdogan, and on the red lines of Iran, on the unacceptability of changing its border with Armenia. It was there was not one addressee. That was not Erdogan only. That was Putin as well, the addressee of that statement. Because as this small story of the on fencing Armenia southern border to provide this control for the communication between West Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan was directly initiated by Russia, which and Iran was not happy for that.
I'm sorry, as far as I know, the Russian border troops already there. They control the Iranian-Armenian border. What was they were doing? Is something new that they?
It was something new. They put 5 checkpoints. Currently, 3 of them are not there because of the protest of the civil society and in the society in large. But in fact, that was first time when we fixed Azerbaijan and Russia sharing the same interest of cutting Armenia south from Iran. And it shows, and Iran's reaction to that, and setting their consulate there in Kapan was just a step followed to that attempt. It shows that, in fact, even Russia and Iran doesn't share the same interest in many respects. And finally, as Angie asked about Iran-Armenian relations, strategic and not strategic, but military cooperation. You know, Iran is a very complicated country. And we know not only their red lines, but also our red lines, because, well, we understand that Iran has strategic importance for Armenia as a neighbor with whom we have no serious problems, although it's a different culture, it's a theocracy, it's not democratic country at all. However, we know that there are some red lines for our cooperation if we would like to have multi-azimuthal, multi-lateral foreign policy. And we cannot just sacrifice any other strategic direction because of any closer rapprochement, which is about crossing our red lines. But still, I think there is a deep understanding between Yerevan and Azerbaijan. And again, Emil Avdaliani called Iran's that approach as opportunistic or maybe flexibility, some flexibility, because the existence of the EU monitors and Security Council secretaries back from Tehran a few days ago, and it shows that, and this is after a very intense exchange with Brussels, with Washington, with Moscow even. I think Iran is very pragmatic here in the region. I can't tell that Iran is a very reasonable or a power, as I said. Fuad is laughing. I know that you would like to believe that they are existential threat to you, but
no. It's
please, you can argue afterwards, please.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just finishing. Iran, look, before that deployment of civilian mission along the Armenian-Azerbaijani border, Iran was always signaling that we will not welcome any foreign presence in the region. But after explaining the real goal, the real mission of that, and the absence of any danger or threat to Iran, they perceive that very pragmatic in a very pragmatic way, and this is how their policy works. It's not easy, but still. I know that after this escalation, Azerbaijani side accused official Baku accused Armenians in purchasing some Iranian drones, but that is a fake news. I can't tell you no more, but I know more, and I'm happy that the power of Armenian military industry is so much appreciated, but it's not Iranian, believe me. And finally, as for the Iran's Iranian threat for Azerbaijan, I think for Azerbaijan, it's just a way to gain some Western support, because Iran is really an obstacle, one of the obstacles after Armenia to creating this so-called Zangezur corridor by force. The Western countries doesn't welcome.
But 1 minute, please, in 1 minute.
Yeah, the Western countries, Brussels and Washington, doesn't welcome Baku's stance on Armenian issue, Nagorno-Karabakh issue, etc., etc. So the only factor that Baku may attract some attention in the West is Iranian factor. That is why I think they are intensifying that factor. Thank you very much. Looking forward to Chiragov's comments.
Only afterwards, please.
Yeah.
Yes, to the question of how Russia and Iran or do these two countries actually have tensions in the region, or will they have tensions? I think that for the moment, there are much bigger incentives for these two countries to downplay their tensions. They are preoccupied with some other stuff. That's Ukraine. For Russia, Iran is looking elsewhere, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and elsewhere. And actually for Iran, Russia is very, very positive player in a way that it actually does what Iran wants to do for all these years. You know, essentially it fights the West. I mean Russia. So I think that much will also depend on how Russia will fare in Ukraine. If it wins, I think the space for Iran's maneuverability in the region will be much limited, because victorious Russia will be more, you know, assertive, maybe even more aggressive, and will be very much unwilling to have other powers, you know, to share the region with itself. So I think for the moment, no tensions, but we need to watch the spillover effect from Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's collect now another set of the questions. I have one recent hint here. Please, Arkadiusz Legis, NATO Liaison Office.
Yes, hello to everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Perfect.
Yes. Yes, sir. I see you don't see me, so forgive me. Something is not working, but I'll just ask my question. The issue I want to ask was already touched upon, but I want to ask for that more straightforward. And firstly, also thank you to organizers and speakers for a really interesting and fruitful seminar. But what I want to ask, do you think that more military presence of Iran in the region is possible? And in which scale? I'm really of the answers of all the speakers, because you present slightly different and original perspectives, as you understand. So I'm really interested on your vision. And the second thing I want to ask is the European Union mission in Armenia, newly established. What is the opinion of Iran? What is the importance of that mission from the perspective of Iran, in your opinion? Is it a regional spoiler for Iranian policy, or is it kind of advantage which can be used of Iran in the foreseeable future? Thank you.
Can you repeat the second part of your question, because I don't think it's something with there was something problem with audio.
Okay, forgive me. The question was, is European Union mission in Armenia is seen by Iran as a kind of spoiler for its regional policy or a kind of factor which can be used positively in the foreseeable future?
Okay, we go in the same order. So Yeghia first, okay?
Yeah.
If there is no other
Yes,
question, of
thank you.
course. Is there any other question here? Okay, if not, then we go through our speakers the same order. Yeghia first.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. Regarding the first question, I don't see any like Iranian military presence in the region that is like a base or military base, even though I'm sure from my source that Iranians many times proposed that for Armenia, but the Armenian side was not ready. I mean, we already have the Russian military base, now European with military base. We don't want to turn Armenia into lateral football club. The second, regarding how the Iranians will view the Europeans. The Iranians were initially, they have reservation, and until now I can say from my Iranian sources that they have reservations because even when the Iranians many times they proposed for Armenia to supply them with weapons, drones, and so on, there was a pressure from the American side on Armenia not to cross the red lines. The Americans, I mean, they are okay when it comes to trade relations and cultural relations, but not military relations between Armenia and Iran. So I cannot say how the future will develop when it comes to European. I mean, let's also remember that this is unarmed observers; they are not armed. But we are not sure also how it will develop in the future, whether if things will escalate further in the south or the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, how these observers will react, how Armenia will react, and also how Iran will react. So the future of how Iran will perceive the European mission is also dependent on the future developments between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Thank you.
Yes, Fuad?
Very good question about the military presence of Iran in the region. Well, let's put it simply. We have 3 South Caucasus countries and 3 regional powers. Russia has military presence in all 3 countries: Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, on different forms. Turkey has a military, and Russia has a strategic ally with Armenia and strategic partner with Azerbaijan, minus Georgia. So 2 plus minus 1. Turkey has a close military alliance with Azerbaijan, some military presence in Azerbaijan as well, in Afghan monitoring mission in Karabakh, and have very good relations with Turkey military interaction. Minus 1 is Armenia. Iran is the only country does not have any strategic partnership until now, I mean, with some official document, and does not have any strategic partnership on military level. So they obviously see that they are loser part in this direction. One of the reasons of the escalation, I think, is to push and penetrate into the region, I believe. That's why they appointed ambassador to Yerevan as the former ambassador in Syria with military baggage and etc. That's why they in Rush opened the consulate in Kapan in order to coordinate all operations and logistic issues in the south of Armenia. We also have one of the triggers that eco activists started to close the road in Lachen was the last drop was around 30 Iranian sabotage group entered to the Karabakh territory, which is controlled by Russia. By the way, Russia, head of the Russian peacekeeping mission, General Volkov, accepted that they are the Iranians. They were Iranians in Karabakh. But he referred them as a construction workers. Still, we do not know what they were constructing in Karabakh, but we have photos and pictures of these people. They do not like the ordinary constructed workers, but they are very fit and very healthy young men. So I think I could cover my position.
Yes. Next, Stepan, please.
Oh yeah. Well, in fact, I think that taking into account all sensitivities that all sides or major powers have in the region and in Armenia in particular, I think the form itself that EU just copied Georgian mission for Armenia and deployed a civilian mission was that was in the very beginning, as Yeghia TASHJIAN said, we heard some suspicious or cautious statement that knowing that Iran has never been interested in any other military presence in the region and next to its borders. I think that was a good decision, especially when Tehran understood that EU civilian mission, presence of EU civilian mission along the Armenian-Azerbaijani border is perhaps not that much strong, but still very important tool to prevent large-scale escalation and to prevent President Aliyev from its military far-reaching goals to create that corridor. And if Iran knows that, in fact, despite the disagreements or differences with EU, with NATO, etc., that common positions are preventing that worst scenario for Iran, I think it was not that much difficult for Armenian officials to explain them why Armenia asked for these civilian monitors and why they are there. And this is not about any military presence next to Iran's border. Secondly, Mr. Chiragov touched this fake causes for the closing of Lachin corridor, as if Iranians were transferred to Nagorno-Karabakh. We saw only some scans of passports, to be frank. And here in Armenia, we also, as an analyst, as a person who can have some access to the information, I couldn't dig that much to understand what the hell those Iranians were doing. And I think, like ecological concern, Iranian, as I said, Iranian fear or Iranian threat was needed to close that corridor and to put some checkpoints, as the Russians and Azerbaijanis were jointly claiming. And here again, coming to Iran's military presence, I strongly believe I would like not to have that pessimistic or worst scenario in the region, but it might be realistic only in one case. If Russians are left the region, they cannot implement their obligations, let's say, although they are not doing that now. However, if formally they are not here, and Iran fears feels some fears from any development. Otherwise, Armenia also is not interested in having any other military base on its soil.
Yeah, it's very hard to add anything to the potential Iranian military presence in the region. I think so far we have not really seen any confirmed facts. In terms of trends, I think the chances are quite low for the moment. We are not yet at the moment where Russia or Turkey sort of will be are that weak to allow Iranian military presence in the region. So yeah, that's basically very short comment from my side.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands here. So unless you have something to add, any of you, my dear friends and colleagues, then thank you so much for your participation. Thank you to all, I mean, everyone, our guests, and thank to Andrzej as well, who was, as I already mentioned, heart and soul of this event. I'm sure we're gonna meet each other online or in flesh to discuss the ongoing issues, and hopefully they will be much more optimistic then. Let's see. Thank you so much once again. Meeting is adjourned, as they say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.